Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We've all been there, haven't we? You're just staring at an email you need to send, maybe a job offer you need to accept, or, one of those difficult conversations you've been putting off forever. Your stomach is completely in knots, your mind is racing a million miles a minute, and you just cannot seem to make a move. Well, today, we're going to unpack a brilliant mental model that's designed specifically to cut through all that short-term emotional noise and help you make decisions with absolute clarity. So I want you to really think about this for a second. What is the worst decision you've ever made? Seriously, take a moment and vividly picture a past regret. Got it? Okay, now think about the state of mind you were in when you actually made that choice. I'm willing to bet you weren't exactly feeling calm, cool, and collected. The truth is, most of our absolute worst choices are flawed, heat-of-the-moment decisions that are driven by panic, frustration, or just this desperate need for immediate relief.
And as authors Dan and Chip Heath point out in our source material, the decisions we end up regretting the most are almost always choices made in the grip of visceral emotion. Things like anger, lust, anxiety, greed. Now here's the kicker. Visceral emotions always fade. They just do. But the consequences of the decisions we make under their influence, yeah, those stick around. Whether it's snapping at a colleague, skipping a critical presentation, or staying in a totally stagnant situation, just because change feels a little too scary right now, that short-term emotion is an incredibly terrible advisor for our long-term happiness.
Just to show you how perfectly universal this is, let's look at two micro-anxiety stories from our sources. First up, we've got a software developer who was asked at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday to step in for a senior engineer and present at a huge company-wide meeting the very next morning. His stomach churned. He desperately wanted to say no, literally just to make the anxiety stop. Then, on the totally opposite side of the spectrum, we have a woman named Annie. She'd been dating a guy named Carl for 9 months, they were about to take a gorgeous road trip up Highway 1, and Annie was just agonizing over whether she should be the first one to say I love you. Carl was famously slow at making decisions, and she was terrified of the immediate, unbearable awkwardness if he didn't say it back. So, two very different scenarios, right? But the exact same paralyzing present-moment anxiety.
Bringing us to Section 1, Meet the 10-10-10 Rule, the 30-second antidote.
Developed by business journalist Suzy Welch and popularized in her 2009 book, this tool was designed specifically for these kinds of high-stakes, emotionally charged choices. It's essentially the antidote to that paralyzing anxiety we just talked about. The rule is brutally simple, but man, is it effective. When you're faced with a tough choice, you just force yourself to answer 3 questions. First, how will I feel about this in 10 minutes? This isolates your present emotion, which is usually fear, relief, or some kind of social discomfort. Second, how will I feel in 10 months? This completely shifts you to the near-term consequences, helping you look way past the initial turbulence to the sustained reality of your choice. And third, how will I feel in 10 years? This is the ultimate values check. At 10 years out, you aren't trying to predict the future perfectly. Instead, you're asking which choice actually aligns with the person you want to become.
Moving on to Section 2, Escaping Present Bias and Why Decisions Feel Hard.
To really understand why these choices feel so incredibly hard in the moment and why our brains basically glitch out when we're under pressure, we need to take a quick detour into neuroscience. We need to look at what scientists call the affect heuristic. Basically, your brain is hardwired for survival. It prioritizes immediate emotional signals like anxiety or fear over rational long-term analysis. And honestly, if you were being chased by a predator, this instant emotion-driven reaction would keep you alive. But it is an absolutely terrible mechanism for making modern career choices, complex technical trade-offs, or, relationship milestones.
And this brilliantly illustrates another cognitive trap, present bias. This is our natural tendency to assign completely disproportionate weight to immediate costs and benefits compared to future ones. It's the exact reason we grab a smaller immediate reward right now, or why we avoid a super uncomfortable conversation today, even if having that exact conversation would massively improve our lives over the next few months. We just over-index on the present moment.
So what the 10-10-10 rule actually does is create temporal distance. It actually forces your brain to engage the prefrontal cortex, which is the part responsible for long-term planning. Think of it like a giant painting. Relying on your immediate emotional response, well, that's like staring at a painting from 6 inches away. Literally all you can see are chaotic brushstrokes. But running the 10-10-10 rule is like stepping 10 feet back. Suddenly you can see the whole picture.
Which takes us to Section 3, the rule in action, proving the versatility.
Let's move to a real-world scenario and see how this builds beautifully to solve a classic technical dilemma. Imagine a development team is arguing. Should we completely rewrite this messy legacy code or just patch it? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is if you look at the 10-minute horizon, the team wants the rewrite. The instinct is to say yes just to make everyone happy right now. But jump forward to 10 months. If you rewrite, you're going to spend months not shipping any new features, completely stalling the business. Sure, if you patch it, the tech debt grows, but the product actually moves forward. Now jump to 10 years, the legacy service won't even exist in either scenario. The 10-10-10 reframe often completely kills massive rewrite projects because you suddenly realize the 10-month pain of delayed features heavily outweighs the 10-minute satisfaction of just saying yes to your team.
Or how about a major career risk, like leaving a comfortable, secure job for a startup? Run the rule. At 10 minutes, you are utterly terrified and overwhelmed. At 10 months, well, you've either grown enormously or the startup failed and you're out there finding a new job with new skills. But at 10 years? You're either going to be thrilled you took the leap, or you'll deeply regret spending your 30s in a totally comfortable, unchallenging role. The 10-year view almost always favors action over comfort, because regrets of inaction compound over time in ways that taking a risk rarely does.
And remember Annie, the one agonizing over saying I love you on Highway 1? Well, she ran the 10-10-10. At 10 minutes, she knew she'd be super nervous, but ultimately proud of herself for taking the risk. At 10 months, she wouldn't regret trying, no matter what Carl's reaction was. And at 10 years, she'd either be happily with Carl or happily with someone else entirely. By zooming out, the choice became blatantly obvious. She took the initiative on that road trip, and because of this simple framework, she turned her anxiety right into action.
All right, Section 4, Patterns, Limits, and Speed, the macro perspective. When you start using this tool consistently, whether you're using it individually or as a manager, some totally fascinating macro patterns begin to emerge. You essentially build an algorithm for conquering decision fatigue. So the crucial point is understanding these rapid-fire rules of thumb. First, pain now but gain later. Like having a really tough feedback conversation, just do it. Gain now but pain later, be highly cautious. If the answer is the exact same across 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years, decide immediately because the specific choice doesn't actually matter much. And finally, if the 10-month and 10-year timelines aggressively diverge, well, that's your signal to slow down. That specific choice requires a lot deeper analysis.
Now, of course, it's really important we look at this impartially. The framework does have a few limitations. First off, it completely assumes you can predict your future feelings, which, let's be honest, is notoriously difficult. Second, it totally ignores mathematical probability. Asking how will I feel doesn't exactly account for the actual statistical likelihood of an outcome. And finally, as we saw with the startup example earlier, it does bias heavily toward action, mostly because almost all bold moves look pretty brave in the 10-year rearview mirror, even if a bit of caution was genuinely warranted at the time.
But honestly, despite those limitations, its absolute greatest strength lies in this single number right here, 30. It takes exactly 30 seconds to run this rule in your head. That's it. No massive spreadsheets, no endless committee meetings, no agonizing pro and con lists. Just 3 simple questions that rapidly generate momentum and pull you right out of analysis paralysis.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today, and I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. I want you to think about the decision you are actively avoiding right now. You know the one that's giving you that constant low-level hum of anxiety? Stop spinning your wheels in indecision. Run it through the 10-10-10 right now. I promise you the answer is a whole lot clearer than you think. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next one.